VJ Edgecombe stole the show last night. I think he had like 30 points, bro,
Hmm.
against the Jazz. Super smooth game. Just really showed his athleticism transition.
Yes.
You brought up the dunk that he had, but he had a couple nice layups, a couple nice finishes. I mean, we're not going to look into it too much. I was telling CJ before we recorded that summer league's very wishy-washy. You don't want to overreact to that. The way Tim Bontes was explaining that, summer league is kind of like where if you do well and you're a high draft pick, cool, and if you don't perform, people start to get worried. If they need to prioritize health management, this is kind of where I get into the load management thing that spoke about 10 minutes ago. They need to prioritize load managing AD, obviously Kyrie when he comes back, but maybe also Cooper Flag. If you guys are punting the season, if you end up winning 20 games, you need to look into making sure that he's healthy moving forward. I think we've seen a lot of Achilles tears, a lot of injuries in the playoffs, and I think that kind of speaks to how many minutes these guys are playing in the regular season. I know people want to push for awards, but the Mavericks aren't in any spot to take a risk just yet because the roster isn't fully built. I think if Kyrie was still in the mix, it would be a different story. But as of right now, they do need to be careful with load managing guys. And what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boys over here at Three Man Weave. I'm the lovely co-host ZD in the building with CJ. We're coming at you guys live on a Monday, July 7th. CJ, how you doing, man? How you feeling, brother?
Feeling good, man. Just, another day, another podcast, just ready to chop it up with you about hoops and, you know, just ready for the day, ready, College football just came out, excited for that. So, but just ready to chop it up with you about hoops, man. How are you doing today?
Good, bro. I'm in the building. We're gonna go around the NBA for a second. There's been a couple interesting things, but we got the Dallas Mavericks to talk about. So, hey, bro, I'm excited, man. I think they got saved. I don't, we've said it a couple times on this pod, but I'm excited to dive into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
John Collins, I think Norman Powell got traded.
Yep.
That's pretty interesting. You said Paolo got that extension too
Yes,
a
sir.
little while ago. So, yeah, man, got a couple things to chop it up about. So I'll just get right into that. I think that trade with the Clippers was very interesting. To me, that was a failure by them. I don't really understand that move. I mean, I think they drafted the center in the draft. I forget his name, Yannick something, but
Mm-hmm.
they also have Zubac as well. And adding John Collins to the mix, I can see. Obviously he's a little bit younger, more athletic, but he hasn't played very well since he played with the Hawks. And Norman Powell was coming off one of the better seasons that he had in his career. I think it was the best season he had in his career. So to trade him to a team like Miami, who's going to utilize his services at an extremely high level, honestly, like Miami is like one of the best spots for Norman Powell to be in. Just like they have Tyler Hero, right? No more Jimmy Butler. He's going to be able to get his shots up, get in rhythm. But I was really shocked by this, bro. Just I don't really know why they decided to make this move today. Um, Maybe there was something going on that we don't know about. Because to me, trading again, that's just not on my docket. If you would have asked me a couple days ago, "Oh, are you interested in John Collins for Norman Powell?" No, no.
Yeah.
I think we got a third piece in this deal with Kevin Love going. Where did he end up going again? I think was it the Jazz, bro?
Jazz. Yeah, Jazz.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a veteran move. That's cool. I think that'll be good for their roster. You definitely need a locker room guy. And Kevin Love's one of the best guys we have in the NBA. He's definitely going to be looking to get other dudes involved on the Utah Jazz. But I think this is about John Collins and Norman Powell, bro. Like we just said. I mean, my first thoughts are like Miami instantly gets a little better. I mean, it's not like a crazy move, but they didn't have to give up too much. I think he was sent to the Jazz, to the Clippers, and then Norman Powell moves to the Heat.
Mm-hmm.
Utah receives Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson,
Mm-hmm.
plus that 2027 second round. So wasn't a ton of movement. It's not like Miami had to give up a bunch to make this happen. Um, so that's it. That's like an A trade for them, in my opinion, bro. I would say probably top five, kind of moves that have happened so far in the offseason, in my opinion. That's kind of like a sneaky, underrated move for Miami. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hey, if the Clippers want to move in this direction, go with a little bit more athleticism and more like I don't know. I don't really know what John Collins is going to give you that Norman Powell wasn't really doing better besides the athleticism. I mean, he's not really a defensive plus. He's definitely a worse offensive player too. So, and I don't want to hate on him too much, but to me, it was kind of head scratching. To be honest, I have it in my notes. I don't really know why the Clippers decided to make this move, especially with competing in the playoffs. I mean, he made our all playoff teams, right? Like Kawhi had a great playoffs, and so did James Harden. To be honest, I think they performed pretty well, and it was, you know, we haven't brought it up yet, but I think Norman Powell had some deficiencies there, and that could be why they decided to move on from him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Same thing whenever I saw it, bro. I didn't really understand why. Kind of my initial reactions was, Miami Heat got a little bit better. They were kind of needing someone else that could score on that team. Obviously, they have Tyler Hero and Bam. Now they have Norman Powell as well. And after the season that we just saw him have, arguably MIP if he would have been able to play meet the game requirements, but just kind of what he was able to provide for them offensively, the Clippers at least, like, that was probably the best I've really seen Norman Powell. And like you said, maybe it was, getting younger, I guess, but even then, John Collins doesn't really provide what Norman Powell was able to do on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't really see why the reason was. Maybe it was to get younger, but then again, it's like if you're still trying to compete for a championship, I don't think this really was a step like a needle mover. I say that a lot, and I don't know if you acquiring John Collins made y'all any better, really. Like, so that's kind of my initial thoughts from that trade. But I think it was great for Miami. I think especially with the East being how it is going to be this upcoming season, they do need a little more offense, and he provided that for the Clippers this past year. So fantastic move for them. Like you said, it's very under the radar type of trade. Like, oh, Norman Powell for John Collins. A lot of people might not think that was a huge deal, but I mean, for the Heat that usually aren't able to get or don't really make moves like this a lot, I thought it was great for them. But for the Clippers, it was just kind of like, why? What was the reason? Like you said, there might have been stuff behind closed doors that we don't know about, or maybe it was his performance in the playoffs. But if you think John Collins is going to provide any more than that, not like you said, not talking down on him, I just don't think he'll probably perform to the same level, to be honest, in the playoffs. Like, I don't see him being like that piece that like makes them a championship
Yeah,
contender. So, but shout out to the Heat.
right. Yeah, not for sure. I think the Heat get better from this, but yeah, I mean John Collins hasn't. I think he played really well in that playoffs with Trey. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Since then, been kind of downhill.
Mm-hmm.
I think Norman Powell is more ascending. Definitely that type of player right now. So
Mm-hmm.
very interesting move, but nonetheless, it happened today. I think Kevin Love is probably excited to start winding up his career as well. So shout out K Love, bro.
Yep.
But yeah, you want to speak on Paolo's extension?
Yeah. So this just broke probably a little bit right before we started. Paolo Banchero and the Magic agreed to a 5-year Ricky Max extension, which is going to be 239 million maximum rookie contract extension that could reach 287 million. I think that's if he makes an All NBA team or an MVP or a Defensive Player of the Year this upcoming season. So I thought that was terrific. It was actually the first player option as well to be from a rookie contract since Trey Young and Luka Doncic. So I think that just kind of goes to show the type of player that Paolo is, and the Magic believe in him and what they're trying to build around him. So I think that was great. I'm a low key Magic fan, so I love this move from them. I think this is a step in the right direction, kind of what they've been trying to build for the past couple of years since they've drafted him. And if they weren't going to extend him, I think it would have been a huge mistake. So I think it's going to be great for them. They have Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner. They have them tied up for the next 5 years. So I think they have a really good core that they're building around. And with the addition of Desmond Bane, I have high hopes for the Magic coming into this next season. So I think this was a perfect deal. And I think it's kind of they're going to with this max contract, it's kind of a set piece for kind of all these ones that are going to be coming up. We're going to start seeing, what these extensions are going to be looking like for these rookies and like the J Dubs, the Chets. So we'll see what that ends up looking like. But I think this was a great deal. He's their franchise player, one of their cornerstones for their team, and I think this was a move in the right direction, like they've been doing for the past couple of years. So shout out to the Magic, bro, making all the right moves, and they see that this is their window to actually make some noise in the Eastern Conference. So
I love that. That's a perfect explanation. I think they want to continue to build around him. I mean, we'll get into it in our offseason file, but I think it's clear that this is a signal that they're moving on from kind of the dark depths that they've had over the last couple of years. I think they're going to have Franz Wagner. Paolo Banchero is going to be there for a while. You brought up Desmond Bain, but good for him, bro. I'm glad to see him get paid. Obviously, one of the, I would say, top 30 players we have in the NBA. So I know he's at the back half, but definitely a special player, and we saw his performance in the playoffs, bro. I mean, you had him on the list. I think he's a killer, bro. He's one of them ones. I know I mean, he's completely changed like the trajectory of their franchise. I mean, I was gonna ask you, is he probably the most impactful Magic player since Shaq?
yeah, I would say so. Probably since Dwight, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably like in that same realm. Obviously, haven't gone to the finals and haven't had really playoff success. But as a young player on the team, yeah, I would say probably those two players. Maybe T Mac if you want to bring him in that conversation. But like I said, not really playoff success. But as a player, yeah, I think he has that type of impact for sure.
yeah. I think yeah. I mean, we just have to see what the Magic can do, continuing to add more pieces around him. I think they've done a good job building their team out, bro. I mean, we're gonna see. I mean, they have some new faces this year, and they lost Cole Anthony, who's gonna hurt their depth a little bit. But I think they've been able to build around Paolo just because of his skill set. He continues to get better every single year, so that's good. Yeah, I mean, this makes sense, like you said. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna see people get player options, but
Right.
that's pretty rare. But I mean, if you're a franchise superstar, potentially for sure. And like you said, Chet Holmgren, J Dub, like there's a couple people that are coming up that are pretty special in the NBA that are have been on rookie deals or looking to extend. And yeah, I mean, if people don't know too, if you are extended by your original team, I think they can offer you like more years, more money.
Yeah, bird rights,
If they
right?
haven't traded, yeah, I think it's bird rights. Like they just have the right to kind of make sure that you're still there, and I think that's cool. So shout out Paolo Banchero. Obviously, he's one of the Magic's bright hopes going forward in the future, and I'm very excited to see this. I think the news broke when Shams dropped it, so yeah, I mean, 287 you said was the number 6 years. That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be 30.
Yeah. Yeah, bro, it's a decent contract. So they got him locked up for a good while. So like I said, they're building up their core, and hopefully we'll see how they are next year. But the
Yes,
future
sir.
is looking bright for them. So
100%. Yeah, man, the Lakers summer league. We got some summer league games too. VJ Edge come going around, but yeah, Dalton Connect's really struggling right now. Not really a big deal. I think he's shooting like 2 of like 19 from three. Summer league, I'm not tripping about it.
right.
Bronny's also struggling a little bit. But yeah, no, VJ Edgecombe stole the show last night. I think he had like 30 points, bro,
Mm-hmm.
against the Jazz. Super smooth game. Just really showed his athleticism and transition.
Yes.
You brought up the dunk that he had, but he had a couple nice layups, a couple nice finishes. I mean, we're not going to look into it too much. I was telling CJ before we recorded that summer league's very wishy-washy. You don't want to overreact to that. The way Tim Bontes was explaining that, summer league is kind of like where if you do well and you're a high draft pick, cool. And if you don't perform, people start to get worried.
Right.
I think Alex Sarr,
Yeah.
he started off like whatever, and people were like, "Is this guy like just trash?"
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you got to give these rookies some time to warm up to the NBA game, and I
Yeah.
think they're testing out that new rule as well with the heave thing. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, VJ was everywhere on the court, bro. 10 rebounds as well. So I didn't catch the game, but I was able to see some highlights, and he just looked very comfortable in an NBA setting. I think with the NBA spacing, that's really what I had to star in my notes was just VJ Edgecombe and the NBA spacing is going to be scary. I think him and Tyrese Maxey are going to be a dangerous duo. CJ and I have already kind of alluded to that going through the first round of the draft, but just seeing it in action, bro, is a completely different story. I think Ace Bailey on the other side, on the other hand, was kind of struggling to get going, but I was going to say that he is in the right situation to build his expertise when it comes to shot selection. Um, he was kind of known as a shot chucker at Rutgers, and I think he's going to have to learn how to pick his spots in the NBA a little bit better. I think he was forcing it, but he can't force it on the Utah Jazz, and I think that's good too. I think the situation that he's in allows for him to grow as a player and get a little bit better with the mental game. I think he's very offensively skilled, and he always has a little bit more room to grow. But to me, one thing that I had in my notes was like he could get a shot over anybody. This was not like a struggling to get his shot off issue. Nobody could really guard him. I think he was just missing shots that didn't allow for him to get in the flow of the game. So unfortunately, that's what you get. You finish with 8 points on poor efficiency. But yeah, bro. I mean, BJ kind of stole the show. We saw toe pitch for a second. I know you'll go into that, but yeah, I'm excited to see what happens on that court whenever he gets a chance to play with the Philly starters and Paul George and all those guys, and they kind of have a interesting team, man. They got
Very.
the duality of both ends, the young boys and the old boys, and they're kind of going at it, either side. So I think Philly has a lot of hope going forward in the future, and I think the Jazz are right behind them. I think they got to develop Ace Bailey a little bit more, but yeah, it's tough to watch some of these guys who aren't going to make rosters and probably it's not the best basketball, but it's something to watch for sure.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I was just about to say that. I mean, you brought it up as well. It's, we you don't want to overreact too much, good or bad, but like you were saying about Alex Sarr, his summer league wasn't the best, and then we saw what he kind of turned into as the season went on. But if you do good, people don't overreact, but if you do bad, that's usually when people start saying stuff. But it's cool, like you said. At the end of the day, it's basketball, and this is a basketball podcast, so we're gonna watch it. We're gonna analyze it as well, and just kind of my thoughts about just seeing VJ. Like you said as well, I wasn't able to watch the whole game, but I saw his highlights, and just it pretty much looked like his game translated to the summer league. Obviously these players aren't. Most of them probably aren't going to be making a roster, and a lot of them are rookies and second, third year guys that are trying to get their footing and just kind of stay in the rhythm of an NBA game. But it was great the way that he was attacking the rim, and I saw him hit a jump shot as well. And I think it's just kind of a little preview as to the type of player he can be. Like it was just looking effortless out there for him. Just I think he's, we talked about it, when we did our draft review and just kind of talking about each draft pick. I think he's, one of the most athletic players, more than likely on the court majority of the time. And it looks like anytime he's attacking the rim, it looks like he's doing it with ease, like I said. So it's just, he looks very like a raw prospect on the offensive side of the ball. But, if he can figure out his game, get to his spots, and attack the rim well. And I think kind of probably lock up on the defensive side of the ball. He's going to be a really good player, man. It's going to be exciting to see what he could do in this league. And like you said, Philly is in a weird spot with their roster. They got PG, Joel Embiid, and then they got the younger guys, McCain, now VJ. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, they're in that spot of, we still have great veteran players, but we have these rising stars and players that are probably going to be a part of our future. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that, their rotations, and who's going to be getting more minutes off the bench or going to be starting potentially. So excited, man. Like you said, it's summer league. It's nothing to go overreact and go crazy about like BJ's gonna be rookie of the year, all-star, whatever. But it's basketball, so it's great seeing
Hey,
high competition being played, and it just gets me ready for the regular season already, man. It's crazy.
he's gonna make an all rookie team if he's
Yeah,
healthy, bro. He's the 65 games limit.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
he's
agree.
gonna be there, bro. He's gonna be there. Um, But yeah, man, we gonna go into the off-season files. If you guys don't know, we break down all 30 NBA teams. We give you guys a look into their off-season. Today we gonna chop it up about the Dallas Mavericks. So CJ and I gonna go back and forth on the information we have to present to you guys. But CJ, would you like to break down the three franchise players that we know that the Mavericks are building around? You know, we they had a special draft, recently in 2025, but I think that trade with Luka Doncic kind of traded their completely changed their outlook, bro. So it changed everything.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
let's get into it.
Let's get into it, man. Like Z said, we like to start off with the three players that the team is going to build around, or kind of their best players on their team that we think that they should build around at least. And number one on this list is going to be Kyrie Irving. Obviously, he's going to be out for majority of the season with that torn ACL, but we know the type of player that he is whenever he does play, and he's a huge reason why they were doing so well even without Luka. And then see him go down, it was definitely tough, but he's definitely the whenever he was there, the engine of their offense, the one that kind of kept them at bay, like I said, after that Luka trade, and just kind of the how special he is, bro. I think that a lot of people are, without him playing in this upcoming season, well, the whole season at least, they're definitely gonna see how special he is whenever he comes back. I feel like it's one of those you don't appreciate it until it's gone, and then whenever he returns, it's gonna be a great thing to see. Especially with the roster that he has around him. We're gonna get into the next couple players, but yeah, Kyrie Irving, man, for sure, definitely number one on that list. Obviously, gonna be missing some time, but he's got to be their one of their players
Yeah,
that they're building around.
yeah, bro. And he took a little bit less money. I think the 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
120 number is pretty good. I think he's gonna be getting paid like 40 something $1 million. But you did a good job of explaining his role on the team, bro. Like all star, one of the best players that we have in this league. Still at his age, I would say he's a top five point guard in the NBA. Like you said, when Luka got traded away, not even go down, just gone. Kyrie really stepped up and kind of showed that he's still somebody who can carry an offense at this age. And a fringe 50, 40, 90 guy, one of the most efficient players we have in the NBA. And yeah, bro, he gave him a lot of flexibility with that deal. I think he could have got 140, whatever, been a little bit more expensive. But I think he sees that he's kind of coming to the end of his career, and he wants the Mavericks to have some extra cap room to, work around. And I think that says a lot about Kyrie Irving's character. Um, Tried to get thrown to the birds when he was on the Nets and the Celtics. I know he got a lot of hate, but he's kind of revitalized his career, bro. And he did a good job of explaining how important he is to this team. And bro, with the other couple players that they got, and that they're going to be building around, it's like they're going to be dangerous. They're going to be dangerous whenever he comes back. And it sucks to see that he tore his ACL, but it happens, man. And we're going to see how he performs too when he comes back. But hopefully, he's still the Kai that we all know and love.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, bro. It's like I said, it sucks seeing him getting that injury, bro. Especially where they were at and just kind of the momentum they have building up. It sucks, and especially the type of player that he is. Just super humble, a bucket. Everyone loves Kyrie, the way he could score and get to the rim and do all this. I was really impressed with his passing ability as well. So it sucks, man. But yeah, just. Was there anything else you had to say about Kyrie, or you want
Kai,
to?
uh, huh?
No, you want to head into the next one? But yeah, next player, Anthony Davis, two-way centerpiece in the front court. He's still on a 3-year, $175 million extension. He inked before being dealt from LA. The deal runs from 2027 2028 and pays him $54 million in 25-26 season. His contract makes up the roster's single largest cap hit, but also anchors Dallas's defense and inside scoring. Yeah, I mean, a lot of money. Like I said, just like I just brought up, but we you know for sure. I'm pretty sure the audience knows his impact on both sides of the ball, and if when healthy, I think that's the main thing. Like before he got traded, when he was in LA, he was rather healthy for the most part, but when he is, super impactful on both sides of the ball, and one of the best power forward centers that we have in this league, and kind of what Nico was wanting this trade for was the defensive side of the ball, and with him on that side it's incredible. One of the best rim protectors we have in this league. But like you said, that contract is very hefty, takes up a majority of their cap space, and it's going to be interesting to see, what he's going to be able to look like without having Kyrie right next to him. And we saw a little bit of it in the play in this past season, but uh,
Yeah,
it's gonna be interesting. He had that whole offseason to heal up, and hopefully he could stay healthy. But I think that's the thing with AD. It's when he is healthy and when he's able to be on the court. We don't doubt his ability, but that's part of the game. Your best ability is availability. I like to always say. But yeah, no, that's they're the second player on the second player we have for the Dallas Mavericks. But
for
what
sure.
else do you want
Yeah,
to get?
yeah. He's like they like to make fun of him, made of glass, whatever. But I think this is, the Mavericks were willing to take on his big contract because they see the value. I think the two way value is really what they're looking forward to. He does anchor their defense, and I think he's been one of the better defensive players that we've had over the last couple seasons. His injuries are a concern, and going forward, we'll talk about it kind of later. Some strategic improvements that the Mavericks can implement to be a better team, have a better offseason. I think they need to have certain plans in place for AD specifically to kind of load manage him. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, AD is very, very good, bro. And I think he's going to have a full season. We're going to see the damage that he does with a lot of usage because Kyrie's not going to be there. So we're gonna see full Anthony Davis. He's going to play 35 minutes and be kind of that dominant force that he was being on the Lakers. So I got nothing else to say. Definitely a player that they're building around.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And then last but certainly not least, the number one pick from the 2025 NBA draft, Cooper Flag, number one pick and franchise future forward on a standard rookie scale deal, 4 years, 62 million with team options for years 3 and 4. The average annual is 15.68 million, and league rules block any trades involving Flag until August 2nd, 2025, ensuring Dallas keeps control while he develops alongside the veteran stars. Um, y'all know who Cooper Flag is. If you don't by this point, one of the best prospects people are saying we've seen. One of the on both sides of the ball. I think the thing with him is what he's able to do on the defensive side, which I keep bringing him up. Shout out to Nico, that's what he was wanting, and also just kind of what he's able to do on the offensive side of the ball as well. We were seeing it when he was doing it at Duke. I think he led in all major statistical stats, and just kind of seeing what he can do on a defensive playmaker, also being an offensive playmaker. It's going to be very interesting to see how he fits on this team. I think we said before he's probably going to be a day one starter. I think as he
Yep.
should be, and being alongside AD, that's going to be super interesting. I think Jason Kidd was saying that he's probably going to play him at PG at certain points of the season, so we'll see how that is. But yeah, I'm super excited to see what he turns into in this league. I was, I'm not a Duke fan. I'm a North Carolina fan, but I respect Game, and he is one of the better players that I've seen in a while in the college scene, and just kind of seeing how his game has translated from each level of basketball. High school, now into college, and then into college, and now hopefully it translates to the league as well. And I think it will. Honestly, just the type of player he is. Maybe he might not be as dominant on the offensive side of the ball, but I think he's going to bring it on the defensive side of the ball. His intensity, I think that's something as well that people speak very highly of him. He wears his heart on his sleeves. He's like shouting. If he gets a block, he's like
Confident, very
confident,
confident.
very confident. So excited to see what he becomes. And of course, the Mavs, got a lucky break once again and end up getting the number one pick in this draft. But I think he's gonna fit nicely alongside AD, and then whenever Kyrie comes, it's gonna be even better for him. He could kind of be more playing off ball, just kind of focusing on defense. But with his absence, Kyrie's absence, he's going to be able to potentially get a PG role, maybe even like potentially be like a playmaking forward. So excited to see how they use him because he's very versatile and he's like a do it all forward essentially. So that's kind of what the league is transitioning to now. Like these forwards are able to do pretty much anything on the court, and he's a perfect mold of a player to build your team around. So excited to see what he becomes.
100%. They're on his timeline. I was going to say he's probably the most important player in this entire bundle just
Mm-hmm.
because of his age and just coming in here and being really, I mean, they did not expect him to be in the facility, but I know they're happy to have him, and it kind of changes the Mavericks timeline. I think that's all I was going to add is you did a good job of explaining his background and kind of the impact he's going to have at the point guard position now that Kai is going to be gone. But yeah, bro, I mean, I'm excited. I think Cooper Flag's like exactly what they need, another two-way kind of guy who's going to develop his shot, develop a three-pointer, but I think he's most effective on the defensive end. And if he can pitch in 15 points, you're most likely looking at the rookie of the year. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the Mavericks are a first apron team. It's interesting because you would think they would be a lot better for where they are. We spoke about this in the last pod about the Cavs, but we do this alphabetically. So um, we got back-to-back apron teams right now. I think they're due 203 million as a total, like their annual total salary put together next season, which is again, it's very very high. I think it's their mid-level exception. I think for this year and their first round pick for the 2032 is not frozen because I think they're in the apron. They're in the first apron, not the second. I think they're like $11 million, between $7 or $11 million under the tax under the second apron. So right now their cap is very heavy. They do have a heavy balance sheet. I think the front office is probably looking to move off of Dwight Powell, who's been sort of a black hole for the Mavericks franchise the last couple seasons, not really providing any production and just taking up a lot of capital for that type of production. Dinwiddie left, so they don't have to worry about that. That I think it was like a $3 million deal or something like that. That got cleaned up, but yeah, they are right by the second apron, and it's funny because their team is not in necessarily the best condition. I would say championship condition. There's still a couple pieces away. We haven't talked about the other guys on the roster, but Dante Exum, Najee Marshall, you know, who else? Jaden Hardy,
Gafford, PJ
Gafford,
Washington.
Lively, PJ. Like all those guys are good pieces, but they are not pieces that I would say are gonna converge to a championship here. So I think they have to move around some pieces before they're seriously a threat to the West. The West is also, we've talked about it, it's Death Valley, but
Yeah.
I think the bottom line for them is just if they can make some certain strategic moves with their payroll, I think they'll have a better start to the offseason. One of those moves is, we brought it up, but moving Powell, I think like he's been great. I think he's kind of like a Mavericks legend when you look at the tenure and how long he's been there, but I don't think he's the answer at power forward. I think you can find a better backup for cheaper, and I think they should look to do that first. But just making sure that they move around to stay out of the second apron is probably most important. They do have their picks. It's not like they're in a situation where they gave up a bunch of draft capital or anything like that, so they will be able to build towards the future. But yeah, we'll have to see kind of moving forward what happens with this offseason, how they strategically make certain moves to stay out of the second apron, because that's what's really limiting is I think you can be a first apron team and kind of be where they are, and that's not going to kill you. But if you approach the second apron and you get into that tax, you're going to pay a significant penalty for a roster who, personally, we just explained, three-man weave doesn't necessarily think is going to converge to a championship. No offense to the Mavericks, but I still think they have a little bit of a ways to go. So I think this is kind of the next section. We like to give out some strategic improvements specifically on what they can do to improve their team. Some of these are on court, some of these are off the court, more business strategy. But number one thing for me that they got to really maximize on court is the fit around Cooper Flag. You talked about it, but just making sure that he has all the necessary resources to be their franchise player, the minutes, the reps, being able to get the shot opportunities. With Kyrie down, there's going to be a ton of shots that need to be absorbed. And, we just ran through the roster a little bit, but there's not a ton of guys on that team that can create their own shot besides Anthony Davis. Maybe Najee Marshall, too, a little bit to an extent, Jaden Hardy, right? But I think Cooper Flag fits right into the mix as being a focal point for them. And I think they need to emphasize that, develop some spacing, a shoot first offensive team around him. So where he feels like he can run the point guard or the point forward, as they like the kids like to say nowadays, and be that two-way superstar. I think they are currently better on defense than they are on offense. And I think that gives me some hope moving forward because that means they'll be able to improve as the season goes on. And I think it starts with Cooper Flag, number one, just to maximize that fit around him. Number two is they need to establish like a clear offensive hierarchy. I think when we look at the first point that I made, you might run into some trouble here about who gets the ball, especially whenever Kyrie comes back. I don't know if he'll come back during the middle half of the season or like the back half, but I know that whenever he does come back, it'll be an interesting kind of thing, that interesting puzzle piece that they have to figure out. I think AD is probably their first offensive option, but I think Cooper Flag should be the second option. There's really no reason why anybody else should be higher, but you still need to establish that. You need to make sure that Cooper Flag feels like he can fit right into the mix, like I was saying a couple minutes ago, and again, their offense needs a lot of work. I think their defense is a lot better, but they can build around Cooper Flag, maximize the roster fit around him, and then also establish that hierarchy. I think they'll be pretty good for their on-court offense. The Mavericks didn't necessarily struggle, especially at the latter half of the year because but I think Kyrie definitely boosted their offensive stats, and now that he's not here, it's going to be kind of interesting. But yeah, the next one that I had on my list is they got to commit to defensive versatility. I think, like we've been mentioning, their defense is probably the number one attribute that the Mavericks have. So they got to go full force with that, not be afraid to make sure every guy's flying around. They need to be a top 10 defense if they want to have a chance to go to the playoffs and be a top 5 seed. I think their versatility on defense is already there, but I think Jason Kidd just needs to implement the right strategy around the players that he has on his roster now to make sure that they are doing so. The Mavericks are notoriously known for being an offensive team. Luka Doncic was at the helm of that, and the reason for that. But now that he is gone, I think they have to change their identity and focus more on defensive versatility. So that's why I have that point in there. They do have longer wings, PJ Washington, Najee, Cooper Flag included, right? And I think that's going to help them on the perimeter whenever they're going up against teams that run small ball. And then they do have teams that can, they do have a roster that can go against teams that run the two big lineup, Gafford, Lively, AD, like they are very versatile on defense. So I think that's going to help them out a lot. And then kind of like some of the last little things that I have in here is like they need to prioritize health management. This is kind of where I get into the load management thing that I spoke about 10 minutes ago. They need to prioritize load managing AD, obviously Kyrie when he comes back, but maybe also Cooper Flag. If you guys are punting the season, if you end up winning 20 games, you need to look into making sure that he's healthy moving forward. I think we've seen a lot of Achilles tears, a lot of injuries in the playoffs, and I think that kind of speaks to how many minutes these guys are playing in the regular season. I know people want to push for awards, but the Mavericks aren't in any spot to take a risk just yet because the roster isn't fully built. I think if Kyrie was still in the mix, it would be a different story. But as of right now, they do need to be careful with load managing guys. And God forbid somebody gets hurt on this roster because I think it really does impact what they can do moving forward. So they need to keep their guys healthy. And so that was the last kind of on-court strategy you could say that I had for the people. Would you like to get into the off-court strategies that are mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of our off-court strategy, like the business and organizational strategies that we have, is to stay under the second apron at all costs. We talked about it a little bit earlier, and we discussed it in our last podcast about the Cavaliers, but the Mavericks are kind of in the same situation as we discussed about AD being taking up a lot of the contracts and everything. But just avoid the hard cap restrictions by maintaining flexibility below the $207.8 million line. Be selective with signings. Explore 2-for-1 trades that bring in cheaper depth while offloading mid-tier salaries. Example,
Like
no,
Powell.
Dwight Powell, like we brought up earlier.
Yeah, mid-tier salary, $14 million a year, not too expensive, but not cheap, right? I think he should be earning below 10 million. Offloading those salaries for guys, we kind of talked about it, but for guys who are a little bit cheaper backups, I think is a good way to explain that. But they're currently in the first apron. We've talked about two apron teams, so that's definitely a good reason.
Yeah, yeah. And the next one, capitalize on flags markability, plus use the mid-level exception wisely if needed. Take advantage of increased sales from Cooper Flag. If a veteran wing or big becomes available mid-season, use the taxpayer mid-level exception and allure the allure of playing with Cooper Flag to get somebody, but only if someone like Dwight Powell is moved first. Candidates involve 3-and-D wing who could play playoff minutes or a lower usage big with versatile spacing. Um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
yeah,
I think that's a really good. Yeah, they need to look into a big who can shoot threes consistently. They do not have that.
no, they don't.
And Flag's marketability. We haven't talked about that, but he's going to drive a lot of ticket sales, a lot of jersey sales. You guys probably saw the spike in the season tickets. So the Mavericks need to capitalize off of that. Whether that means going out and finding veteran guys who, like you alluded to, kind of playing on their allure of playing with Cooper Flag, somebody who's young and up and coming, and kind of using that to maybe push for an NBA championship and making sure they still have that mid-level exception available. So yeah, it's another great point. Yeah, and like you said, their target I think could be a big. It could be like a wing, a little bit of a hybrid wing who's just a 3-and-D guy again. I know they missed Dorian Finney-Smith, Mavericks faithful, salute, but
Yeah.
yeah, bro. The one player that I think would be interesting that they could get is Chris Paul. I had it down below, but that's the one
That would be
actual
very
player that
interesting.
I feel like that would be good on a 1-year deal. He's cheap, probably $6-7 million. He can fill the role of a not a Kyrie Irving, but of a playmaker, an elite floor general, somebody who's going to be able to throw lobs and get other guys involved and not take up a lot of shots. So that was kind of our on the court, off the court kind of strategic improvements that we know the Mavericks can make. Like I said, I think adding Chris Paul to the fold could be interesting, but
That I
yeah,
think that would
Dallas, you guys,
I was about to say, I think that
that'd be
would be
solid.
a really good move for them. I think Chris Paul said that he's wanting to be a starter. This would be a perfect situation to. Obviously, Kyrie is injured, like we brought up a few minutes ago, but that would be a perfect situation for him. They have the bigs that are kind of play into the style that CP likes to play as or with the tossing lobs and being a creator for other people, and then if he needs to, then he could score a little bit, but that's not why. More so, you're kind of having him on this roster, but it's just kind of to be someone that can create for other people. They don't really have a lead guard, so I think that would be perfect. Honestly, I didn't really think about it, but yeah, no, CP on the Mavs might be kind of decent. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, bro, and like he can just fill that role for a year, and that's all they need him there for, and they have the money to do it, make that veteran mid level exception available, and we'll see if they do it, man. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, yeah. You heard it here on Three Man Weave first.
100%. You heard it here on Three Man. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. But CJ, you got anything else for the people?
No, man. Just summer leagues going on. If y'all want to watch some hoops, it's always fun seeing what these rookies are able to do on the court. Obviously it's not regular season. It's not NBA season per se, but it's always good to watch basketball. And if you're interested, trying to see who's going to be, like we said, don't overreact too much, but kind of a glimpse of what these rookies can do. It's a great way to see it. Like you said, VJ went crazy, dropped 28, and kind of saw what he can potentially be in this league. I would say just watch that, man. Our thing here is watch hoops and just keep watching basketball, bro, regardless of what time of year it is.
Support the NBA, man. Support Three Man Weave.
Yes, sir.
That's gonna do it for your boys over here, man. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Like I said, we'll We'll catch you guys next time, man. Peace, man.
Peace.
Three man,
Three
three man.
man.